You can read about Kenyan triples. People are going for 3 runs in a day. Look at your fundamentals. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you at peace in your head? Is your approach to training informed by appreciation for the sport and, you're not trying to like flex on your boys?
The pass was made by Margot Loggia, returning the favor.
It's Will Loggia, second straight year. What a battle.
And the young man running for the hometown Terriers will win.
Let's go, Will, finish.
Now Will Loggia taking it out.
Will Loggia, Goober. Will Loggia, we got
Will Loggia, huge kick.
Welcome to The Kick, a runner's podcast. I'm your host, Will Loggia. I love running and I love a good kick. Today's guest is none other than Aditya Singh, truly one of my running heroes, and I don't say that lightly. Not only is this guy one of the most knowledgeable people I know, but his journey as a runner himself is one of the most inspiring stories I've been lucky enough to witness. Every time I talk to Aditya, I learn a ton, and I know today will be no different, and our listeners are in for a treat. So without further ado, Aditya, thank you for joining me here on The Kick.
Hey, no problem at all, man. Happy to join up, participate. Gotta come out for my boy Will. You know how it is.
Talk about a full circle moment. 10 years ago, I'm joining the high school cross country team, and there's this guy on the team who's clearly, the best guy on the team, and it's you. And to think that 10 years later, I would be, just chatting it up. We chatted even before this episode started with you and having learned so much over the years, the past decade from you, it definitely feels like a full circle moment. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, no problem at all, man. No, I'm happy to, rehash some memories, talk about running again. I mean, it's still playing a part in my life overall, but yeah, it's a joy.
I think a perfect place to start is just kind of the famous Aditya story. Maybe you're sick of it, having it been told for so many years and generations on the Westfield cross country team now. But basically, the way the story goes is I come in my freshman year, you're a senior, and you won the time trial, which is our 2-mile time trial we do at the end of every summer before the fall cross country season starts. Probably pretty typical for a lot of high school programs. And for me, I just see, okay, that guy's the top guy on the team. You were the fastest guy. But then our Coach Stafelsky, kind of gathers the freshmen up. I don't know if it was the same day or, days after, but I just remember hearing a story for the first time about how you were actually dead last in our time trial in your freshman year. And it was just this inspirational story of like, oh my, like, wait, that means like he could be any of us, like any of us could be that guy. And it's such a cool story, and I definitely want to hear your perspective on it and your journey there.
Oh man, where to start? I mean, I guess there's so many things of just like random offshoots of things that almost happened that were almost part of the program. So the actual freshman year time trial that Tefelsky, our coach, must have been referencing, that was actually a November 2-miler. That was such a strange, and now looking back, that was such a strange phenomenon. But it was the fall of 2013 it would have been. And me being the plucky freshman that I was, I mean, I wasn't making any strides in JV or varsity at that time. It was a totally different, me getting my first exposure to cross country. And it's like middle of November, all JV guys are probably off at like Thompson Park, whatever. And Tefelsky has this idea to do a November time trial of like the guys who are, I think it's some JV guys, it was somebody. Anyways, I didn't run the initial time trial that fall because I had joined the team later in the season. I didn't even do a summer beforehand. But yeah, that was a November 2-mile run. I think I was talking to a coach at that point. I was eager to break 14 minutes for 2 miles. And I got just underneath. I went out in like 6:50 something. I ran 6:59 pace for 2 miles my freshman year. And then, yeah, that was that. And the cross country mile that followed up. I don't know if you've already talked to your viewers as to what the cross country mile was, but the idea, if you, I mean, I can say, unless you want to tell them about it.
Go ahead. I mean, yeah, it's a legendary tradition on our team. It's kind of unique. I would love to hear you share that.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a unique it was a unique concept I was exposed to. I mean, cross country as a whole was entirely new for me, but the idea that, we'd had this 1 mile race with handicaps oriented in such a fashion that the faster you were, the more time you would wait to start your own mile race and have the race finish, like the idea being everyone finishes at the same time in like in a perfect execution of it. But the first time I did it, I was the first one to start because I was the slowest on the team. And my fastest time, my fastest mile time, the fall of 2013, was a 6:37. Which looking back, I mean, again, first exposure to running, I'd been maybe training for like literally a few months at that point, which were grueling, but it was fun. I mean, I guess context that you wouldn't have had about that fall 2013, like heading into my freshman time trial, was I was like, what, 150 pounds, like heading into my freshman year of high school. And through just running cross country, I think I lost like 15 to 20 pounds within the span of a few months. And it's something, a story I bring up with my parents. We just laugh at it now. But I was so tired my first season running cross country. There was like, I think, 1 or 2 week stretch where I would come home, have dinner at maybe like 6 p.m. or so, go straight to bed, wake up at 2, do all my homework, get ready, and go to school. It was insane. And mind you, this is me like trying to adapt to running like just a few miles a day, which was like at that point, like 20-mile weeks, like I don't think twice. But at that point, like it was just such a what I was throttling my body in that regard. It was such like such a violent transformation, a metamorphosis. Like we talk about butterflies, going from caterpillar into the cocoon and then out again. I felt like I was melting, but I mean, it was intense. So like that freshman year, um, was very much just like, uh,
It's interesting to hear about it because like you said, you're providing context for me. I basically have no context because I didn't even know you then. I was a little sixth grader in middle school, and just hearing it, like, obviously I know the story of like how you went from being one of the slowest guys to being the fastest guy, but when you actually talk about what that looked like
yeah,
and actually break it down, it's different. I think we're so used to hearing about people like at different parts of their journey in running
yeah,
without actually, yeah, contextualizing it. So I think that's fascinating, and I'm glad that we were able to share the cross country mile here because it's a great concept. Basically, anybody had a chance to win, which is a really cool uh, aspect of what we did at the program at Westfield.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, going like forward beyond that, given your humble beginnings, what kind of motivated you to be so invested in running? Because where your results eventually ended up were
Yeah.
obviously, a product of your investment in the sport. And I'm just, curious what kind of drove that interest for you.
I think what was pretty clear is running cross country and track, especially within the kind of environment that it was when I was going to school. That was the first time that I actually felt supported as an athlete. And like I don't have any qualms about, being frank. I was part of a sports program in middle school within which the coach was only preoccupied with paying attention to kids who displayed a lot of natural talent, natural athleticism, or whatever predisposition towards being skilled in that area. And because I was overweight in middle school and like I liked doing like sports and stuff, but I never subjected myself to like training in that regard. And the entire experience that I had in terms of my sporting life had been kind of one where I was like accustomed just to kind of being not paid attention to or like discarded by whatever other coaches I experienced. And like in that regard, I mean, as a kid, I don't know if I have even like the internal vocabulary to like internalize that and self therapize or whatever, but I was focused on having fun, regardless of what was going on, and maybe not as much so developing the skill set and like investing hard into like the craft itself as much as I like the idea of just like hanging out with my friends in this context. It wasn't until going into my freshman year of high school. I mean, I'm having a very honest, like heart to heart decision or a heart to heart conversation with my dad as to like what my athletic career would look like for those next 4 years. And he told me, basically, he was very frank. You're not getting attention and you're not like growing as like an athlete in this sport you're doing. I mean, I played, it was ultimate frisbee. Yeah. I was trying to do ultimate frisbee for a bit. My dad's like, you're not growing here. I think it's time to just start and try something new. And I'd already missed the summer heading into cross country, but he said even then he said, your sister ran, she enjoyed it. I think you should try this too. Go like start taking care of all the logistics you would need to join the cross country team. And he pushed me because he was like on top of me the first few weeks, like you getting your forms in, whatever. And after that, and spending that first season running cross country. I mean, like from the physical aspect, it was grueling. From the social aspect, I was with like who would become my long-term friends in high school at that time. But from a coaching aspect, I felt actually that whatever I was doing mattered. Like regardless of what level that I was at, which was like you said, very, very humble beginnings. My first ever 3 mile race at Tamaquas, pedal to the metal. You know what I'm talking about. I ran a very I ran I was talking to he's before your time. I was talking to Perella and I was thinking, hey, what do you think I should aim for running 3 miles? And he said, go for 29 minutes. That might be a good goal. I ended up running a very cool 25 minutes, 8:20 pace for 3 miles at Tamaquas Park. And that got me 88th out of 89th. Um,
Good
so I,
memory. Wow.
no, I mean it's yeah, all of this I can recall like basically almost nearly every race I've ever ran. Um
That's a skill, especially when you've run as many as you have. And I think also just hearing from a guy, I didn't know you crossed path or you crossed over with the legendary Jeff Perella.
yeah, no. He
So he must
was
have been one of the older guys. Obviously, I know the guy, the name as a
yeah.
Westwood legend. But when a guy like that tells you something and then like you go out and do it, it feels even more rewarding because you're like, oh, like that's one of the good runners. Like,
Yeah.
look, I just did it.
I mean it's like that too, like it's one thing being a freshman and being in the environment where no one is getting cut from the team and then eventually becoming one of those older guys and understanding the purpose and like why that's even like a part of the overall ethos. um but yeah, I mean the drive really started was because like after that first season, having experienced what I did, just spending time like in an environment that was actually invested in my growth. Like I had nothing to show for in terms of natural skill, but like I still felt that my presence was important for the team. And like my friends even took some mild inspiration. Like I remember my one friend, he moved to Maine now, but he was telling me he was excited about whatever prospects of like me running at like the cross country mile. Like I was making very small jumps at that point, but like it was a very growth oriented and encouraging environment compared to what I had been exposed to early on. And so
I think
what
that's
that
true of the sport a lot, not just at Westfield, but just like this the
yeah,
sport of running cross country. Like it's generally something you're doing it wrong if you're not supportive of every athlete. And with our program, it was such a large program, no cuts. I
yeah,
mean, we literally had hundreds of people between boys and girls team.
It was a
And
party, man. Like
yeah,
it was like I don't know. I think it's I mean, after high school, people shouldn't spend time litigating like hierarchies of how everything operated, but cross country and track was a very freeing environment. Very cool. Yeah.
absolutely. And I always like that we celebrated the biggest drop in a race, like PR wise. So like if you ran 16 minutes in a 2 mile one week and then you ran 14 minutes
Yeah.
like the next month, you had a 2 minute drop,
Mhm.
and we would celebrate that. Obviously, you're not having a 2 minute drop when you're now running 9:30, but I think it's like a great way to celebrate those drops because, as we know in the sport, you have the ability to make those bigger drops early on, and then it gets
Oh my
harder.
god, dude. The whole phenomenon of newbie gains is insane. Like freshman year, you will literally experience yourself, like you said, dropping a couple minutes between races like over the course of a month, but then like you get to like a certain tier of competition and you just think back, you're like, how was that even happening?
I think it's a great motivator early on. Is that like, yeah, if you are not coming in with a running background, you are going to improve rapidly, and you're going to be able to celebrate a lot of PRs. And so I
Mhm.
think establishing that early in people's running careers is a great way to kind of get hooked. And
Yeah.
then, by the time you're at the point where you're not having those big drops anymore, you've probably gotten pretty into the sport, and you don't need that as much anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but one thing that you bring to the table that is, I mean, for me, like I said, learned so much from you, but you actually do officially coach as some athletes of your own in the sport, and I'd love to delve into that and what you're doing with your clients there, and kind of what motivates you to do that, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, my career, like personal career trajectory has shifted over the past number of years, but I'm still like the people that I'm coaching, I'm still taking care of. It's really, I mean, that kind of goes back to it. I like taking care of people when I can. And like, the reason why I'm pursuing my career as an independent artist is just kind of like making music, spreading joy. But per the coaching, right, the longest term project, the people I'm coaching right now, they themselves are Westfield alums. Phil Chappelle, he was also before your time. I always kind of get on him for the fact that he was only ever, when I was a freshman, he was a senior, and he was only ever around for winter and spring track. For the fall, I think he did marching band. So I never saw him for the cross country season, and I'd be like, "What are you doing, man?" But I mean, like, I get it. Like, I understand having diverse interests, and then also my other client is 1 year ahead of me. Her name is Katie Brown. She actually got into running only when she was in college. When I was in college, and like I was still on a team, and then started coaching her. But I think what's been really exciting about that has been I kind of have a little like it's an avenue for me to experiment with like different like workout ideas and like training implementation based on like what they're going for. And like particularly with Katie, in Phil's case, he was a seasoned athlete through high school, and so he has that kind of volume base from competition that makes it so he's familiar with a lot of the ways that I administer training. Whereas with Katie, we basically built her from the ground up. Like around 2018, she was running maybe only like a few days a week, like 20 miles a week or so, and dealing with like some chronic weaknesses and injuries. But then over the course of, wow, now it'll be almost 8 years, she's at the point where she's running like 80 miles a week in singles and like been training for marathons like regularly, and she handles some crazy work. I write crazy work for her, but it's been it's kind of been insane to see what she's been progressing from able to do. I mean, we're talking about prepper what was the last race she ran? Oh god. She ran the Delaware yeah, the last big one for her was the Delaware Running Festival. She threw down 3:14:15 overall, and that was she placed for overall women. I think it was you got a trophy. I think it was second. But
Wow.
I mean,
Congrats.
if we talk about the dedication, right? She's a full-time teacher, and she's getting all this work done before her workday. Like 5 a.m., she is up and out the door, like putting in miles. And by virtue of the circumstances, we combine her long run and her workout into one session on the weekend. And it's gotten to the point I've literally sent her for 9 times 2 miles over a 3 hour run, and she'll get like 23, 22, 23 and a half miles, but like on a weekly basis. And like, mind you, the only reason that works is because we take our recovery sessions really, really seriously in between. And the only other workout stimulus she has in between that is some hill repeats at our friend Roanoke Road. All reliable, man. um but I mean, it compounds, it adds up. She handles it well, and it has oriented her to be able to, I mean, stay healthy. Like in terms of like, we haven't even, I mean, knock on wood, right? We haven't even thought about injuries in like years at this point, and we're managing just kind of like life stress, like her work day and like her just making sure she gets enough sleep and like adjusting like around that too. Especially, we just got hit with an Arctic blast,
Oh,
and like her managing training within that, like that is, especially with the experiences that I've had over my own like running career, like I can see these things and understand like, okay, I am willing to forego trying to like eke out 100%, 110% from her, as opposed to like chilling out while it's hard to get out there, let her psychology be like retained, and then start to like make the best of a situation. It's unique circumstances. um,
how as in your perspective, it's a role where you're not only responsible, almost like you said, like, oh, she hasn't got injured in a while. I feel like I would feel very responsible for that, but also just the rewarding, she just did really well in a race. Like when she has these PRs and accomplishments, like what does that feel like for you as a person who's writing the training? Obviously she's doing the work, but you're a big part of it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I think the biggest thing, and this is like a general point, I have done a lot of work to detach like ego from my accomplishments, not in the sense that I stop acknowledging that good things have happened, but I don't necessarily allow it to like create this immense wave, like, oh, like riding a high almost, because I think that creates a dangerous environment where you can like quickly lose focus on what's important, and you can start to maybe take things for granted. Whereas like I think I'm at a point where I've really just kind of like oriented myself towards keeping a very steady wave of like not not undermining, but also not over like embellishing. And for myself, it's just like, if she's healthy, happy, training well and responding, that is like, that's my job. That is what is supposed to happen. And I mean, I don't let it inform an ego. No room for pride in this kind of thing.
You hear that a lot, and also what you're saying about, like, you never get too high or too low. Like the great ones, whether it be an athlete, a coach, any
Yeah.
industry, like that's always what you hear. You never want to, be riding that emotional roller coaster as best you can. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, sometimes like you have a rough race, it's kind of hard to be like, oh well, like because you put in so much, and vice
Yeah.
versa. You do want to be able to celebrate the big wins too, but
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like there's a fine balance between uh being invested in the outcomes to the point where your performance is allocated the appropriate amount of effort and intention, versus like recognizing like yourself as like a global athlete in person, and being able to understand that if you don't have the day that you want, that doesn't erase like everything else that's led up to that moment. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from my time distance running and that I retain especially now is the importance of like gratitude and humility. And that's something I really try to imbue with like communicating with, the people I coach or like really when I'm talking to anyone about any kind of like, I don't know, ambitious pursuit. It's easy to lose sight of what matters and like really appreciate where you are, you know? Um I think that we can easily put ourselves in our bubbles of like, oh, like I feel like every runner has gone through at one point, they feel like something is like picking on them, like almost like being bullied. Like whether they're dealing with a string of injuries, a string of bad races. But I think that perspective is once again, it's operating in isolation, right? We have to be able to like look around everything that's happening. And it's not to say you look at things and say, "Oh, it could be worse," to like invalidate what you're dealing with, but it's important to have an eye on and have a global perspective so that you make rational, informed decisions towards whatever you're working on or dealing with in the moment. Yeah.
Now, you have obviously trust in the people that are utilizing you for coaching, and you guys have that great relationship. It's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
Um, but for people who don't know, I would say that your training philosophies aren't necessarily like the most, like if you were to look up online or like, ask AI, what's your
Yeah.
idea for my run today? Like you're gonna be a lot more uh, nuanced and have your own kind of creative touch based on all the knowledge you have. So I feel like it is extra interesting in your case having these clients because you're not doing kind of like a cookie cutter program, you
Mhm.
know. So I want to kind of get into that, and some of
Yeah.
the things that you feel like you are able to implement that might not be the most basic, what they would find if they just asked, ChatGPT.
That's a good question. I think that I over the course of my time understanding the physiology around training, my own personal experiences, and having seen both ends, I think that some things come pretty clear into focus. Uh, I guess, I mean, I'm 70s coded as a person in a lot of ways, but I guess specifically concerning running, I look to like how they were doing it in terms of like large amounts of volume and large amounts of volume concerning like easy running. If you're going after not only longer distance races, but just frankly like anything, because it's not even just a matter of aerobic capacity, but it is also running economy. It is actually practicing the motion itself. And to the point, it sounds really counterintuitive if you were to ask anybody else, but the only way I was able to sustain my large training volumes that I could return to easily, should I want to, is the fact that I've transitioned to a zero drop shoe. And I think that that ruffles feathers. That makes people think like, "Oh God, my Achilles tendon is gonna explode." But like, you gotta like when you understand the strength training and like the specific protocols you can engage with to buffer your body against stresses and like retrain yourself to engage your lower leg as it can be designed to. Um, I think that's definitely the most non-traditional kind of like because I've gone in the deep end on my own in terms of like I almost did a full minimalist transition until I realized that like I can only run comparatively fast on soft surfaces if I'm wearing a minimalist shoe. That's even something we talked about on a run we went on together a little while ago. I was talking about the barefoot hill mill. I'm still doing that on the days that I'm running inside. It is what the zero HFS. I'm throwing my treadmill on like whatever amount of incline, and I mean it works. I measure the heart rate while I'm running on the treadmill, even though like my pace slows down, whatever. But it's all neural cues. I put on shoes. I head back outside. I haven't gotten slower. It's just maybe takes a minute to remind my body that I'm running outside again. Um, I think another thing too. uh I am very vocal about like the psychological aspect of training, particularly with uh I think because I've seen Katie through her journey from when she started to where she is now. A lot of it was kind of like developing that mild stoicist, like champion, like oriented mindset of like taking little things in stride and also being like that kind of like experienced guide as to like handling um what problems that when they arrive, and then just kind of like sharing my experience and informing some philosophy, you know. I think that one of the biggest things that I mean, what I internalized at a young age was the idea of being competitive with oneself. But I think what I wish I would have had more wherewithal to counteract on my own at that age was maybe detaching from outcomes, which is again counterintuitive. Racing, running is such an outcome oriented sport. I mean, like sports in general, it's like focused on the competition, your performance there and then. But to be consumed by it, funny enough, is to be removed from your best possible like state of mind and like state of being to perform well. It's like not even treating it as if it doesn't matter, but maybe more so it's like entering a flow state where you're at peace in a highly stressful situation. And that takes training. That takes not only affirmation that and confidence that what you're doing has worked, and it's not delving into arrogance either, thinking you're above the competition or thinking, I'm better than everyone and everything here. But it's just like you need to have an unwavering peace within yourself that you carry over to whether it be competition, anything else in life, like trying new things. Like I think that's why I like the idea of, you know, competitive running being something that's accessible to young people. You get to have yourself exposed to like these kind of raw environments early on. I think that's essential.
Yeah, I mean, you go into the kind of the training philosophy there, and I am always just so impressed because I know obviously you're extremely well read. You've also, studied a lot of this like a school environment, in addition to your own research and things like that. Now, as it applies to your own career and what you're doing as an athlete now yourself, what is your training looking like right now? What are the goals for you in the running department right now? I
Yeah.
feel like you're kind of self-coached, and it's always fascinating to me to see the decisions that you make in your training and where you're headed right now.
Yeah, I think honestly, I've honestly been in a bit of a maintenance mode right now. I'm doing a lot of I'm like moving a bit as like a hybrid athlete just because I'm doing a lot of strength training on a like I'm doing a full body lift 3 days a week, but still maintaining a high amount of mileage that's serving as a health baseline for my musical pursuits, but also as like a tenacity baseline. I think there is a lot of crossover in terms of the mindset of a competitive athlete that is required in pursuing a career in like a music like in a pursuing a career in music. And I think at a certain point I like the idea of racing again. I think the biggest thing I was mentioning the last time we talked is that I am getting to a point where I'm ready to share my experiences and like a how-to guide in terms of like what zero drop running looks like in what I would call carbon plate hell. Excuse my language, but I mean like it's just I see it everywhere, man. Like it's just like I mean I don't even keep track of like runfluencers or whatever, but I only hear the whispers of people going for shakeout jogs in like alpha flies or something. And I'm just like, what? And call me an old head, you know. Say what
Okay,
you got to say.
the shakeout jog, that is crazy to me for sure. But question. you yourself or one of the people you coach is racing, let's say it's a half marathon road race, are you recommending a carbon plated shoe for them to race in?
Because they're paying me for my services, I am there to be like a sounding board and a guide in the best capacity possible for the way they want to orient their running. That being said, I also feel I have a responsibility for their long term success. So it's like, are they gonna do all of their hard workouts in a carbon plated shoe? No. Are they gonna do enough workouts that's on a case by case basis that allows them to develop the necessary like comfort and like neural cues to run in a carbon plated shoe so that come race day it doesn't feel foreign, like the same way you do strides and spikes or you do like some amount of volume in whatever shoe you're racing in order for it to be familiar. There is a fine balance should they want to use it, that come the day they want to race in it, there's no like mechanical issues. Me personally, I've literally never run in a carbon plated shoe. But I
Wow. Do you
mean,
feel like there's untapped potential there, or do you feel like you're better off not becoming reliant on that?
I mean, dude, you gotta understand by virtue of my zero drop transition, I can run in anything. I mean, I'd still stay in the Escalante, but it's like I've gotten rid of the bunions, like the actual like caving in of my big toe that I dealt with. And I mean, I was even thinking whatever Nike Zoom, whatever the hell spikes I was running in my senior year of high school, I literally had my right big toe go numb because of how enclosed the toe box was. And like I remember like stepping to the line of like what group 4 championships and I'm just like, "Huh, I there's a part of my toe I can't feel." And it was over the course of college and then like early adulthood, like I finally have done so much work on my own lower legs to get to the point where it's like I'm comfortable like running zero drop and like walking around in like minimalist footwear that it's I have no business touching carbon plated footwear. Um
I respect it. I mean, I can't say I'm the same way. I am fascinated again by your kind of take on it that is very different from what is being shoved down most of the running community's way of thinking. But
honestly think about it though. It's like you have per like our own lower leg construction, like force management, force reallocation, like it's once it, I can't speak for certain how quickly I could transition someone knowing what I know now, but once you experience the feeling of having fully transitioned zero drop and specifically done it properly, avoided injury, etc., but specifically experience your lower leg absorbing and redistributing energy like as it's designed to instantaneously, step by step, you'll wonder how you were running in any other way. I sound like I'm trying to sell it, but it's actually so unmarketable because no running store is going to be like, "Hey, here's a strength training plan both by virtue of plyometrics and resistance band exercises and like dumbbell calf raises of whatever capacity, like stratified, that'll take you whatever amount of time to undo the amount of underdevelopment you've experienced by virtue of not only just like walking around in dropped shoes, like the things you before you even think about becoming a distance runner, the things you wear are messing with you, which is wild. But
right. I mean, it goes
yeah,
back to like, when the barefoot running movement became a big thing, it was like, well, look, there's a reason why we're relying on shoes now, and it's because we've trained ourselves to be that way. The world also has developed in a way that makes it very hard for that to be feasible.
oh
But
yeah.
I think it's interesting, you've developed your kind of own theories on these things and your own approach as like a high school athlete. It feels very unrealistic that somebody would be taking that kind of ownership of the decisions in their footwear and things like that. Even you yourself we're not quite at that point to be making a decision of like, you know what, I'm not wearing this shoe. Like, at least for me, it was very much like I trust what the running store is telling me. I'm going to
Yeah.
listen to my coaches. I just got obsessed with the work of running. Like, I will do the
Yeah.
training, I will put my all into this, and
Yeah.
then I'll just trust that, the shoes and everything are good. But it's obviously a part of a runner's toolkit to be
Yeah.
able to add some, knowledge themselves of what's actually going on and making those decisions. And I feel like I've developed that, not to the extent that you have, but through college and now like post grad, you do try to like learn for yourself certain things like that.
Yeah. I mean, in that regard too, like if it sheds any clue, the first time what was really kind of like the spark for trying to like take things into my own hands is that like the winter 2018, my sophomore year, uh, was like the first time I ever ran a 100-mile week in training. And I'm in my Adidas Adios like Tempo, no, Adidas Tempo 9s. I think it's a discontinued shoe. But consequently, 9 millimeter drop, whatever, or something like that. And like, here's what I was dealing with. I was getting that mileage done, but I'd go for a morning shakeout before an afternoon workout, and my calves absolutely locked up. I'd go to train in the afternoon and I'd be fine. But in the morning, it's just that like I felt like I was just chronically weak and like it would take me like 20 minutes to loosen up. And I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. And that was the first kind of spark of like thinking, despite whatever amount of extra strength training I'm doing with training, what I'm realizing is that my calves, my lower legs are simply not being regularly recruited to the same extent of like all the other musculature in my body. And even when I started like my zero drop transition, which was like initially summer or spring 2020, it wasn't just my lower legs. It was like the entire like you can call it like the entire propulsive nature of my posterior chain, so like my glutes, my hamstrings. Not only transitioning zero drop, but doing that and going uphill, you'll realize how underutilized like the glute musculature and everything like behind you, and like how underdeveloped it can be as a result. So it's not even just a matter of shifting forces to your lower legs, but like relying on training your body, teaching it to rely on the structures behind you to push you forward. Whereas, and that was like another big eye opener. You're familiar with Ackerman Avenue, or like the big hills near us. And so when I was doing that loop, um, in my Adidas and on the downhills, my quads would be wrecked like after a long run out there. But then transitioning zero drop, necessarily, I'm shifting forces behind me. I'd handle the downhill substantially better. I wouldn't wake up the next day and just be like insanely sore. And like that was just me kind of like learning, like trial and error, like, oh, there's something here in terms of me managing all these like large discrepancies in elevation substantially better.
So one thing that comes up a lot in when you're talking training theory and all these things, a lot of it might go over some people's head. A lot of it even is tough for me to totally grasp. But I
Yeah.
hear hills a lot. Hills are important. They're, you're on the treadmill doing the hill mill. You're,
Yes.
calling out these streets that I know very well that are some of the hilliest in our area. What about hills is so crucial to being a part of your training? Because I've heard, it's, great for your mechanics, for your form. I've heard that from like a hill repeat perspective. Doing that can kind of train you to run, to sprint more efficiently and
Yep.
effectively.
Yep.
But let's talk about hills because it's super prevalent in the running world, and I feel like you know a lot of the reasons why.
I think so much of it's a number of things. I think globally, so much of it just comes down to running economy and neural recruitment. So just like the sheer efficiency with which you produce force through your step and are efficient at a given pace can be improved substantially just by including hills. The story I kind of go over and over again. I feel like I even mentioned this to you at one point. It was like winter 2020, like just before the world exploded, right? And I'm uh I'm in the middle of like a real like threshold heavy block. And me being me, I'm like really slow twitch oriented. And so I'll do like I was probably like the kinds of workouts I was doing like tempo runs and like Ks on the track with maybe like a touch of speed. I remember a specific workout. I was doing like 8 times a K on the track, and I did some just like random speed intervals at the end. And I did a random 500-meter rep after the threshold, and I averaged like 4:48 pace for that 500, just for reference. That same time of my training, I signed up for a 3K at Ocean Breeze. Just to get just to get a mark. The morning of that 3K, I do 3 times 10 seconds maximal hills on like a moderate hill with like strides before and after as part of like a morning shakeout. In college, I had gotten used to doing like a shakeout with strides like 4 hours prior to like a race, just as like because like the same principle, like activation beforehand. And we had the volume to accommodate that without fatiguing. That winter, same deal. I was running like 100 miles a week, like a couple miles shakeout the morning of a race, no big deal. But the hill sprints is key. And that 500-meter rep, mind you, that 500-meter rep, I was like cranking, and like 4:48 pace was the best I could like eke out. So context again, I do max hills the morning of this 3K, and global context, I've only been doing threshold and hilly long runs for the most part without like a heavy speed focus that entire training session. I end up running like 8:52 for that 3K, but I opened the mile in 4:39, and I'm just kind of like what's going on, guys? But I realized like it was kind of like a direct experiment that even by virtue of not having like shifting the emphasis of my training to like race specific or like speed specific work, having done the hills earlier, I could still for at least a mile of that 3K access whatever kind of speed I had available based on the training. And like the 3K is really aerobic. And so then I started asking myself in my head, when we start doing race specific workouts, and like obviously it could be like a case by case basis, when we start doing race specific workouts and we start hitting reps on the track that are within 10% or right at race pace, how much of that, like we say it's for like specific endurance, but then there's something to be explored about the fact that how much can we get to sustaining race pace just by virtue of what I'd call neural access just by doing hills, you know? And I think that same, I mean, again, I can't say definitively like how much or how little to add, but that's something I keep in the back of my mind in terms of it being responsible for just generally helping efficiency. And it's like even when I'm leaving, like goes back to Katie's training, even when she's training for a marathon in the middle of the week, she's hitting 10 times Roanoke Road. um and just like and like we stratify that session. She starts at like a 10K effort and works down. She's not just like blasting it the entire time. But the idea being that that is not a skill you want to or the ability to produce force like that is not something you want to ignore. And hills are also very safe. That's like the biggest thing too. Like speed on flat ground can be very costly, especially if your mechanics aren't good.
I've heard
Like,
this. It's almost like the hill holds you back from going, that too far and injuring yourself, which is an interesting aspect to it. And I think the other aspect to it is like you don't need a track. Like most people, I think, probably have a hill around, or they
yeah.
can, jack up the treadmill. So it's like hills in a way are even more accessible for that kind of training.
I mean, absolutely, and especially for beginners, like if I were to like be programming training for like a bunch of newbies at one point. I think there's something to be said about the fact that in the era of hills being safe, like we talk about acute causes of injury, it is really hard to overstride on a hill. Like, forget really hard, like nearly impossible. Whereas like if you are someone who's new to the sport, you're cranking out reps on flat ground and your mechanics haven't been trained to the point where you can handle that kind of force production without it coming at a great cost. Like the first thing that comes to mind is like hamstring strains and like posterior chain over stress and like stuff messing with your knees. Like it just propagates all over if you don't know how to regulate. But if you are operating from like a sheer injury prevention standpoint, so much of your early work should be spent on hills, I think.
You heard it
Yeah.
here first. I mean, it's simple and easy. Hills I think are
It,
something that people often try to avoid at all costs, but it's one
they're
of those things.
medicine, man. They're so good for you. Yeah.
There it is. Hills are good. Um, Kind of beyond that, there's one topic that I think is very prevalent right now and something that a lot of people are obsessing over and incorporating in their training, and maybe even people who shouldn't be doing it or wouldn't benefit from it are still doing it. But I want to hear, being as knowledgeable as you are, what your thoughts are on double threshold.
Double threshold. So, I mean, the idea of, I mean, honestly, I haven't done. So here's my experience with double threshold. When I was doing it, it was a big session, even either self programmed or when I was on my college team. And what it looked like when I was training for the Philadelphia half back in um 2019 fall now. Uh it was like the last I did it like in terms of how I phased in my training, I had a big block preparing for that. I mean, however the race went, I had a big block of that cycle dedicated to a lot of marathon paced work transitioning to half marathon paced work, because half marathons at threshold you can do that all the time, and like you don't worry about just like fizzling out. But the one big session that I did, and frankly like the week in global context is good to look at, the double threshold session that I did was an 8 mile tempo in the morning at 5:37 per mile, and then that evening I'd hit 4 times 2K at like 5:20 pace. So that was like goal half marathon. And so what you end up getting is like 13 miles of work, but then with warm-ups and cool downs, it ends up being like almost a long run's worth of mileage over the course of two workouts. And then the second workout that week was a hard long run. So what I did that double session on a Wednesday. I followed that up the following Sunday. I hit like 18 miles at like 6:08 pace. I was just pounding Shaq Jeffs, and like I was just like, I mean, eventually I kind of what was it? I fizzled a bit towards the end, but I was used to doing those kinds of long runs on rail trails and stuff. But now on the roads here, even though it's like a not as much of a crazy elevation change, like you start to feel it a bit. Um, so that's what any inclusion of double threshold. So like I hit it heavy, but just like once. But in terms of like a regular inclusion, I think per training principles, I always go back to stress management. You are better off nailing the basics really, really well and staying injury free, and like looking back on a season of like, damn, I did all these workouts fantastically. Whereas like if you're trying to like eke out the final, and this is just kind of like general life advice, before you go and try and eke out the final 10% of the final 10%, look at your fundamentals. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you at peace in your head? Is your approach to training informed by appreciation for the sport, and you're not trying to like flex on your boys, and like you're free of like arrogance and whatever else. Um, I think there's so much that can be still extracted from doing very basic things very, very well before you have to start to consider like these like esoteric, like obscure workouts. Like, I mean, you can read about Kenyan triples. People are going for 3 runs in a day because they want the hormonal response. But it's like, you at the same time, you are not a professional athlete who is living, breathing, sleeping, distance running. That is your only focus point. Like, there's so much life going around that you should enjoy your running. But like, that was a big lesson for me too. Like, you can't let it uh take over your life, because I mean, again, there's things to explore. But again, going back, um I'm curious as to like the I mean, what I remember reading about initially, double threshold was a Norwegian protocol, the Ingebrigtsens, right? Like, these guys, yeah, like these guys were hitting it like regularly, and then I saw it migrate over to the Tinman guys a little bit, and then I started seeing some stuff about them getting like messed up from trying to hit it too
Really?
often. Yeah, I mean, I have to see again, but I saw some stuff about them, like them dealing with some injury rates as a result of trying to incorporate, either like, must have been some time ago, but um
Well, when you
it's
look at the
it
Ingebrigtsen approach to it, it was such a long developed, thing that it then became incorporated into their training. But I think, you know, in some of the cases that you see people doing it now, it can be kind of like thrown in maybe before somebody's developed to that point, or just might not be necessary in their training to keep getting better at that point. But like you said, it comes down to the consistency. A quote I like is, being consistently good is better than being occasionally great.
oh yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
a guy like Ingebrigtsen, like, he is consistently nailing these sessions, so that is what works for him,
Yep.
as something that's not overdoing it. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that something, if I'm thinking back now in terms of the times I did do, like, it wasn't exactly like, it was like two, you could call it two workout sessions, but I think the biggest thing that was erring on the side of caution, like especially when I was doing it in college, I can recall a few times, like, the first initial like fatiguing workout stress wasn't like outright threshold. It was like easy tempo stuff, like maybe just accumulating volume at uh 10 seconds slower per mile than marathon pace before heading out for maybe like a proper workout in the afternoon. Like, I can recall now, um when I was in college, specifically, we'd have days where, if like the race was kind of like not important, we'd hit, like, at the time, like we'd hit like 4 miles, 4 or 5 miles at 6:20 pace the morning of like a hard race, which is like accumulating quality volume, but not to the extent where we're like stepping on the start line like fried, you know? Um I think if we're talking about block training, something that I paid the price of pushing too far, but still worked in concept, was something I picked up from my college coach that I integrated on my own, was following up a race, a short race, or a speed session with a hard to moderate long run the day after. So the one that I kind of like, so there's two that stuck in my head. The one that I actually look back on fondly, and the one that was just stupid. So the one that I look back on fondly was the alumni meet. Again, my sophomore year of college, I ran, we like the for MOCs, right? I ran like a 16:57 at Homedale, and the next day I ran some 18 miles at like 5:54 pace, and that was intentional. That was part of training. Um that was like administered, like my coach said, "Yo, you can run you can run the long run the next day kind of hard." And I'm like, "Bet." So that was good. The dumb one, the dumb one was when I was training myself. I ran an 8K personal best on a road race. I ran like 25:21, and then the next day, me being a dummy, I went out and ran like 14 and change at 5:48 pace. And not only was I metabolically fried, I speed ran IT band syndrome because I had been neglecting lifting for some weeks up until that point. Um and so I started to pay the piper a bit, and I had to like take some time. Like I would take a step on my right leg and it would just cave in, and I'm just like, that's not good. So I had to take some serious time, like away, like just like chilling out, but then also getting my hip strength back in order to actually be able to handle training. There was a lots of single leg deadlifts
Mm-hmm.
in my time off taking care of that. But in principle, it's sound. You can, if you do like a hard short effort and follow it up immediately with a moderate to moderate long run, that is a good kind of like cumulative 2 day stress when you're ready to like handle that. For young people, a race is enough. You don't got to like follow it up the next day and just like bang out uh a 16 or 18 miler.
Sometimes the volume feels natural after a race like that, though, too, because you might have been tapering off a little bit, did a shorter volume day with the shakeout the day before the race.
Yep.
Race itself
Yep.
isn't a lot of volume. So it
Yeah.
does kind of make sense for me in that space. But I
No,
mean,
absolutely. It's sound. Like as a training principle, it's sound. I don't know what you heard from like some how I just remember this one guy I knew from he was I followed him on Strava. He was a co-counselor at running camp. The dude ran and I followed him. The dude ran like 24 low at Paul Short. And then I see the next day he bangs out like 16 miles at like 6:08 pace. And I'm just like, like, hello. And so it's just like, one,
that's
are
probably
you
not even that fast for him.
no, that's what I'm saying though. It's like, one, are you okay? But like, two, are you okay? And it just makes me think like sometimes what you see is that like, oh, there's sound training strategy, but then I mean, again, I'm asking, I don't know how much you've been exposed to in terms of like the grind culture at like the college level of like, being hyper competitive like every day.
Well, and a lot
um
of times I think it comes from a place of like almost being upset with a race. I mean, that wasn't, I think, the case here, the case you described when you overdid it the next day. But a lot of times you could be like really upset with how a race goes, and then you kind of let it all out by ripping the run the next
yeah.
day. But that can happen too, I guess. Yeah, there's all different ways. But
Yeah.
I feel like that is a great place to kind of end off the longer form portion of this episode. But we
Word.
do have a tradition here on the Kick It Didia. Um,
Yes.
we end the podcast fast, just like we do races, with 10 rapid fire questions.
Oh god, okay.
Glad to do this with you. You will be on the clock,
Okay,
but nothing will be too difficult. Do your
got it.
best to answer quickly. We
Yeah,
can we can go into it after you've made it through the 10 questions, but
sure.
you ready to go?
Okay, whatever you got.
All right, let's do this. The clock starts after I ask the first question. Here we go.
Yep.
Would you rather only be able to see heart rate or pace on your watch?
Heart rate.
Favorite high school meet?
Night of 32s.
Favorite loop we ran in high school?
Spring run.
Favorite exercise to stay healthy?
Bulgarian split squat.
Track or road workout?
Road workout.
Winter running or summer running?
Early summer running.
Go to post race snack?
Banana bread.
Favorite running related book?
Running with the buffaloes.
Best time of day to run?
Sunrise or sunset into dusk.
Favorite workout?
Threshold K's, hard long run, or tempo run. Yeah.
Boom, 49 seconds. That's pretty good. Given
Yeah.
the depth of your answers, that's pretty good.
Yeah, these things are at the forefront. Yeah, I was nervous, but no, they're there.
49 seconds for Diddy. That was impressive. I got to hand it to you. Running
Thank
with
you.
the Buffalo shout out there. I know that's a classic.
Yeah.
It actually includes a Westfield alum.
Yes, yes.
He was a freshman at the time, I believe, in the book. But
Amuccio. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, dude, I mean, what was it? The whole saga of that BU team and like the workouts. Oh god. They were doing some, I mean, the whole program is pretty it's legendary in that regard, you know. Like what those
Colorado.
yeah, what
Yeah,
those guys are up to. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean it's definitely legendary.
Yeah.
Great pick there. I had to get you with the heart rate. I had a feeling you were gonna go heart rate over pace. I feel
I
like
mean, you should know when I'm out running these days, I only have an overall timer going, and I don't check pace at all. So I don't know how much I ran until I finish my run,
good
and
for you.
it makes for some very funny. I mean, it makes for some very funny incidences. Today, I actually got 9.01 miles exactly within like 65 minutes or whatever. Not even intentionally. It just happened.
See, but it's like
Whereas
you're gamifying. It's like fun now. Like you get to see
and
at the end of the run how far you made it.
exactly. And like because I do it like that, I can freestyle my routes and like I can just do like I assess my add-ons based on how much time I have left. I'm like, "Oh, I can swing around here."
You like to
If
make
I
a guess of how far you made it and then see how close you are.
I think I've gotten better at like gauging effort versus like how much distance I've covered,
Okay.
but I don't typically make a guess as just kind of like look after the fact and be like, "Oh, okay," you know. Yeah.
That's great. Well, we've got to get in a run again soon. It's cold in these parts, but we
Yeah.
can make
We're
it
getting hit
happen.
with it, but it'll happen for sure.
Hit some Roanoke, some Ackerman, get some hills
Y-
in there.
Yeah,
Easy
dude.
markers.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's always great to talk to you, Aditya, and I'm so honored that we were able to have you on the podcast here. I learned a ton, as always, and I know listeners who made it this far have also learned a lot in this
Y-
episode. So
Yeah,
thanks
man.
for
No.
coming on.
Happy to have come on. Happy to see you make your thing. This is cool. Yeah.
It's been fun. I think the most rewarding part of it has been able to share different people's stories. I feel like no guest that I've had on has been super similar to the last or to any of the others. Everybody's had a very unique perspective, and I feel very lucky for all the guests that I've had thus far.
Awesome. No, dude, mad proud of you. And yeah, we'll see each other soon. Get up for a run.
All right, Aditya, thanks again.
Yes. Take care.